Thank you everybody for joining us for the Instant Resume workshop. Like Tom mentioned, in the panelists we have Ron, myself, Alexi, Felix, and Marco. So this will be the agenda of what I'll be talking about today. So first, I'll be talking about what is Instant Resume feature and why we need Instant Resume. After that, I'll go into how the developers can enable Instant Resume for their channels. Also, I will go into brief guidelines on the channel behaviors. So this is again the Slido URL for the Q&A. So, you guys can ask questions during this. All right, so my first slide is what is Instant Resume? So essentially, Instant Resume feature lets channel save their state when the user exits the channel and goes back to home. And the channel, while the user is in home or watching some other channel, the Instant Resume channel will stay in memory. And then when the user restarts the channel again from the home screen, then the channel will resume from the previous state. So what I show in these two pictures are essentially, let's say you launch Roku channel for the first time, the user launches it and he's taken to the home screen for Roku channel. And then he starts watching, let's say Waterboy, movie. And then he goes back, while watching the movie, he goes back home and then he does some other things. While he's doing these other things on the screen or in some other channels, Roku channel stays in memory. And when the user goes back to Roku channel and resumes it, he will be taken back to the Waterboy screen, the detail screen, basically. So so one thing to note about Instant Resume is each Instant Resume channel will run in a separate process. So that lets it live in memory while user is doing something else in the home screen. So this is what Instant Resume is. Basically, it lets user save the channel state when they exit the channel, and the channel will resume from that state when they come back. So why Instant Resume? What are the benefits of Instant Resume? And Instant Resume has several benefits. I list some of them here. One of the most important benefit is a faster relaunch time. So let's say when you launch your channel initially, it might take up to 7-8 seconds for the channel home screen to come up. But when the user relaunches the channel and resumes it, in our experience, it takes less than a second. Also, it's much better user experience. So now the user is taken back to what they were watching before. So for the user, it's a much better user experience. It's like they never left the channel in the first place. Also, from the memory and CPU point of view, it's much better for the channels, as this lets us do a clean management of memory because each channel is living in a separate process. So we are able to manage that memory much more cleanly now. Also, it allows for, since each channel is living in a separate process, it allows for independent CPU and memory resource tracking for those channels, right? So now if a channel is taking too much memory or CPU resources, we are able to selectively signal that channel or kill that channel depending on how overall resources are going on. Also, now a channel crash, let's say a channel crashes due to some reason, since the channel is running in a different process, it does not crash the overall application, but only the process itself, only the channel itself, and the user goes back to home screen. So for the user, it's a much better user experience rather than the whole device restarting. So these are some of the benefits of Instant Resume. Now I will go into details of how to implement Instant Resume, and later on in today's workshop, I also have some code that I'll be showing where I will be going on each of these, sort of showing them in the code itself. But essentially, there are three required things that a channel developer needs to do to implement Instant Resume. The first one is updating your channel manifest with the required attributes. So there are two attributes that the channel needs to set. One is the SDK Instant Resume, which lets the channel run an Instant Resume way. And the second is run as process, which basically means the channel will be running in a separate process. So you could have, you could only turn on run as process one, but not turn on Instant Resume. In that case, the channel will be running in a separate process, but when you exit the channel will be killed. And whenever the user relaunches the channel, it will be like a fresh launch. So that's the first thing that user needs to do, that the channel developer needs to do. Also, the channel developer needs to implement the suspend and resume handlers. These handlers are basically called whenever a channel is suspended by the user or when it's resumed. So there are suspend handler, which basically in the suspend handler, the developer should stop the video node and free up any resources to save up memory while the channel goes in background. In the resume handler, the channel manages all the user experience, including video playback. Like, do you want to start the video wherever you left it off, or do you want to take the user back to the channel detail screen? All those things can be decided in the resume handler. Also, the channel can handle any deep links in the resume handler. So let's say, the channel was suspended, and then user used some deep link to come back into the channel, then all those deep links can be handled in the resume handler as well. The third thing that the channel should do is adding signal beacons to measure channel resume times. So whenever the channel home screen or detail screen has resumed, the channel should fire a app resume complete beacon, which basically lets the Roku application know that the channel main scene has rendered after resume. This lets us measure the channel resume times. Okay, so my next slide is about channel behavior guidelines. Now, with instant resume, the channel has, all the channels have normally complete flexibility in how they design their instant resume experience. But we do give some guidelines to make the user experience sort of, similar across, different experiences. So one recommendation we do is during live video playback. In this case, if the user was playing a live channel, live video, and then he went back to home screen, we recommend that when the user resumes the channel resumes playback at current point in the live feed. And if the feed has ended, then it has a UX which basically signals the user that the feed has ended. For the video on-demand playback, we recommend that the user show content detail screen on resume when the user continues the playback, right? So that user has option to continue playback or to start from the start. Also, the third point is very important. This is regarding the ad playback. So whenever, let's say a user is watching a video and an ad is playing, and the user goes back to home screen. In this case, when the user will resume the channel, we recommend that we show the channel shows the ad part from the start, right, and not skip the ad. So the channel code in the resume handler should appropriately handle this. Okay, one more thing I wanted to mention is how the instant resume channel cache works. So essentially, the Roku operating system will maintain a cache of all the instant resume channels, and the channels will stay in memory as long as the memory requirement for the system has not become too high. Now, whenever the system is running low on memory, the channels will get purged from this cache, which will mean basically the channel will get evicted. And this eviction basically depends on two things. One is the usage score of channel. So whichever channel the user has been, sort of viewing that channel more has a high usage score. So that channel will be kept in memory ahead of other channels. Also, the background memory taken by channels. So if two channels have similar usage score, but one of the channel is taking too much memory while it's in the background, then that channel will be kicked out first as compared to other channels. So that's why it's important for the channels to sort of reduce their background memory as much as possible whenever the user goes back to home screen. Also, one thing to note is that the instant resume experience, instant resume cache will differ based on the platform. So the platforms which have much more memory will have higher instant resume cache hit rates, right? So many more channels can stay in memory, and those cache hit rates will be much higher. The cache will need not be purged if the platform runs low on if the user is going through different channels. While the platforms which are low on memory, they might see more cache evictions depending on what the user is doing. I think that's my last slide, and so this is again the slide URL for Q&A, so you can go ahead and ask your questions using this. That's all I had for today. Thanks.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Jitesh, for that overview. So we've actually got a lot of questions coming in, which is exciting. At this time, I'm going to invite all the additional panelists to unmute yourself and turn on your camera so you can participate in the panel Q&A. And with that, I'll just dive right into the questions.
I think Tom, sorry. So we also have like a demo, and should we go over them first or?
Yeah, actually, why don't you go ahead and do that? I'll release.
So Felix has a demo after this, yeah. Felix, can you go ahead?
Hello, my name is Felix Mejia and I'm a partner engineer here at Roku. Today I'll be giving a quick demonstration on how Instant Resume works. A little bit of an overview of what Instant Resume does. Instant Resume enables channels to save their current state upon exit and then continue playback upon relaunch. This improves the user experience by letting viewers quickly get back to the content they were watching without having to find it first, versus a channel without Instant Resume having to navigate and find the content themselves on a channel relaunch. Instant Resume is available starting on firmware 10.0, and today we'll be showing this on a Brian, which is a Roku Ultra, running on firmware 10.0. One of the channels that has implemented Instant Resume is Tubi, so we'll be going over how they implemented Instant Resume in their channel. So let's navigate and launch it. So let's see. There you go, launching Tubi. So one thing I want you to keep in mind is how long it's taking Tubi to load, and we'll see soon how Instant Resume can speed this process up. So now the channel is launched and the main screen has content to navigate to. So a little bit of info before going into the demo. Roku does provide some guidelines on how to best handle Instant Resume while the user suspends from a VOD state and a live playback state. In the VOD case, when the user relaunches the channel, they should go to the details screen of the previously watched content with an option to resume playback or start from the beginning. So let's run the VOD case now on Tubi. So let's navigate to what I was watching before, which was Transformers. And then we'll let it play up. So now the content is playing. And let's say, a couple minutes go by and then I'm done watching this and I want to go to the home screen. So I hit home and now I'm going to go back to the Roku home screen. Let's say for the sake of this example that maybe a few minutes later I get the urge to resume watching what I was seeing on Tubi. So let's go back there and we should be seeing a faster launch time when we go back to relaunching Tubi. So let's launch this. So now you see that the channel launched really quick and it took me to the details page of the previously watched content. Previously, this took way longer on the first channel start as it was trying to load everything from scratch essentially. So you can see the benefits here of Instant Resume for the VOD case. Now we want to see live playback, so I'll navigate over to the live TV portion here. So let's back out here and then we'll do live TV. And then I want to watch Live Now on Fox. So let's play that. So now there's live playback. In the case of Instant Resume with live playback, we recommend on a channel relaunch to go directly into playback where it last left off. So let's see how Tubi implemented this. So say if I'm done watching this again and then I just want to go to the home screen. So I'm going to hit home. And now I'm back to the Roku home screen. But maybe another couple minutes later and I kind of regret the decision and I get the urge to rewatch what I was seeing on Tubi. So let's relaunch Tubi and see what the behavior is and how long it takes. So at this point, now I'm already loading into content and it launched really quick and now I'm in playback essentially. So you can see the benefits of having a good Instant Resume implementation for having a better user experience here. So this was just a little demo I wanted to show to see how Instant Resume works. Hope you all enjoy this. Thank you for watching and we hope to see more channels implementing Instant Resume soon.
Very cool stuff. I do think that shows off the power of Instant Resume quite well.
Thank you. So I also have some code that I can share with all the participants.
Yeah, please do.
So let me just share my screen. Okay, can you guys see my screen?
It's pretty zoomed in. There you go, much better.
Okay, so essentially,
Jatish, it's a little small now. You seem to have it. It was pretty good just a second ago. There you go. That seems reasonable.
Okay. So essentially what I'm showing here is the Instant Resume v3 channel, and this is what we have for external developers to look at, so that they can sort of modify or use this as a starting implementation. And this is available on the Roku website. So essentially, I will be showing 3 different files which we have touched here. First of them is the manifest file. So like I talked in the presentation, there are 2 things that you need to add. One is the SDK Instant Resume attribute, set it to 1 to let channel run in Instant Resume, and second is the run as process, which you can set to 1, right? So once you set these two to 1, your channel will be an Instant Resume channel. So once you've set these 2 things, the other thing to do is to set the suspend and resume handlers. So here I am going to my main scene.xml file where I define my suspend and resume handlers, and basically these are the 2 lines that you need in your code. So essentially you are doing a customization on the suspend handler, and these 2 names, suspend handler does need to be defined in this way, right? All the way it is defined, suspend handler, all one word. And then I define the name of the function that will be implementing this suspend handler. So on main scene suspend, that's the name of my callback function. Now the second is the resume handler, and the name of the resume function is on main scene resume, right? So these two functions which you need to define to ensure that your Instant Resume channel works fine. So these I define in the XML file. Then I will go ahead in the actual implementation for these 2 functions. So that I have that is in the video play logic.brs. So here I define the 2 on main scene suspend and on main scene resume functions. So first, like you can see, this is the on main scene suspend function. So this is the function that will be called when a user suspends the channel, right? So we are passing some argument to it, which from the arguments you can figure out if it was a home channel, home screen suspend, or was it a screensaver suspend, right? So you might want to treat those 2 things as differently, especially in video playback as. So if it was a home screen suspend, so the last suspend or resume region was home, and the user was playing a video, in which case the video screen will be a valid pointer, then we find the video node and then set it to stop, right? So that will stop the video node. So this is important and essential to do if to handle the video playback experience correctly. Now there are other things you can do in suspend, but these are sort of the basic things that you should implement. Now I'm going in the resume function. So again, similar to suspend, this function is called when the user resumes Instant Resume channel, and we pass arguments, which again the arguments have, like, is it a home screen resume or a screensaver resume. We also have deep link parameters in this argument. So here I'm handling the deep link case, just calling the deep link with those parameters which are passed. Also, like I mentioned earlier, the channel should signal the app resume complete beacon, which basically tells the Roku OS that the main scene for the main resume scene has already rendered, right? So I get my scene and then I signal the beacon app resume complete, which will let Roku OS know about the resume. Yeah, so I think that's all I have for sharing the code. Again, so this is sort of the minimum code that you should have, and this code is already available online, so you should be able to take a look at this. Thanks. And Tom, now I think we can go in the question answers.
Excellent. All right, great. So I'm going to take over screen share. The first thing I'll call out before we actually get into the questions that you see on screen. So a couple questions did come in that we didn't pass through to this public question board, which there's a lot of questions to get to, so I think that's all right. There were some questions around whether or not Instant Resume will become a certification requirement. That's something that I don't think we can comment on right now, but generally speaking, hopefully everybody on this call is aware that Roku has a policy of always introducing cert requirements 6 months before they become effective. So if it is ever the case that instant resume becomes a requirement, you'll have a 6 month heads up to roll that into your roadmap and implement it. So please do get into the habit of checking around April and October for our update to the certification criteria. And that would be your way to stay informed on that. Cool. Let me just make sure all the panelists. So yeah, call out to the panelists. If you guys can turn on your cameras and unmute yourself, that'd be good. Excellent. Thank you all. Okay, cool. So let's start with these Q&A. So lots of questions have come in. We'll get right into it. Chris Dwyer Perkins is dominating the leaderboard with upvotes. So his first question is are there any plans to add a forced closed caption on the home screen or some other alternatives, as it can be confusing to explain that they must close the channel via the back button method or restart the device when troubleshooting issues? So I think this is actually this is a question around like home screen messaging outside of the app's control. And if it's kind of a roadmap question, so I'm not sure that we can necessarily commit to anything, but I don't know if anybody has any color they want to add to it on this call.
I think so. Basically, I think what Chris is asking is that right now the instant resume channel will be suspended if you press a home button, but if you press a back button, then the channel will be sort of closed, right? And so I think there is a plan to add an option like that so that the user can sort of kill the channel if they require to, and there will be some UX corresponding to that. But I don't think it's not in the 10.5 release, and I'm not sure if it's in the next release. I'm not sure if it's we are planning to do that. Yeah.
Cool. All right. So I'll go ahead and resolve that one. All right, the next question is there a way to expire your suspended channel? For example, if the user closed the application overnight and opened it the next morning, in this case, so much of the data is expired, it would be better to cold start the channel.
So I think maybe Marco, do you want to answer that?
Okay, sure, I can answer that. So the idea of instant resume is giving full control to the channel of the suspend resume experience. So we are recommending, if it's been a short time, like if it's VOD, you go back to the video details screen. If it's live content, as we've already shown, like go back into the live video stream. With that said, if it has been a long time and the data has been expired, the channel's in full control of being able to go back to the channel's own home screen and clear all their caches and reload it if that's what they desire. So yeah, the Roku is not enforcing these UX requirements on the channel. The idea of instant resume is at this point, prior to instant resume, the channel had no control. It was basically you hit the home button and that's killing the channel, and then you're starting from scratch all the time. Now with instant resume, on the resume handler, the channel has complete control as to where they would like to redirect the user. So you can track the time that has elapsed since the last suspend, and then decide on your own whether you want to go back to the video detail screen, or if that video content is no longer available or data is expired. Yes, you can go back to the home screen of your channel. Thank you.
Awesome. Chris is raising his hand. I'm going to call on you, Chris, because I think he has something to elaborate on.
Hi, thank you, Tom. So the main reason I raised this question in particular is for the past half a decade almost, every single channel has been designed to be opened once, and that's essentially it. So to retrofit a lot of that boot sequence logic in apps today is an extremely massive undertaking for almost every app out there. So the root of this question essentially is to say, when I'm suspended or when I am being unsuspended, to say, I can't handle this. Start me from scratch, drop my suspended state, because it's going to be a very large burden on engineers to be able to retrofit their app to support this.
Does anyone want to take that?
Okay, I mean, I guess I kind of alluded to that in my previous answer, but I would say from our experience, having worked with a lot of channels already, it may not be as hard as you might think it is to support instant resume. Actually, the easiest thing to do is bring the user all the way back to where they last left the channel, as that state's already cached in the channel's memory. But going back to the home screen, it's probably not as hard as you think to basically close that scene and then go back to the home scene and reload the state of the channel. But of course, you can, at this point, it's not a requirement to implement instant resume. It's a great feature and we hope you do adopt it. But our experience thus far is to actually go back to the home screen of the channel. For some of the channels that have done it this way, it's not as much code as you might think it would be to implement it.
So to add some small color to this, I'm one of the lucky few that have got to work with this, and it was a very challenging part to deal with. And I had explored the concept on other apps behind the scenes, and to retrofit most of them would have been huge amounts of work. And most of these apps are not ones that I had written. It's just something that I had observed when working with this feature.
Okay, I mean, we do appreciate the feedback. And we do want to make this feature easy to integrate into the channels. And yeah, I mean, we welcome that feedback. So if there are some parts where we can make it easier, please let us know. And it is going to be channel specific, right? Depending on how the channel was architected, designed, and implemented. You're correct. It may be harder for some channels and easier for others. It really depends on how modular the channel was implemented and how that boot sequence, as you mentioned prior, is kind of easier to restart inside the channel. But yeah, unfortunately, the devil is in the details, and it is really dependent on how the channel itself is designed in order to make the integration as seamless as possible. And we do hope for most channels, it is an easy integration. For a lot of channels that have adopted instant resume already, it hasn't been that difficult to support, but unfortunately, I guess in your case, it was difficult based on the design of the channel itself. And please, we welcome that feedback, and let us know how we can make it easier to do that. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah, so I will keep moving just since there's so many questions, and we are supposed to wrap at 12:45. We can maybe run a little late, but I'm going to keep things moving. So John Malik asks a question. I believe there's another one buried in here somewhere around device support. So if anyone can comment on, we do have that list on our docs, just FYI. But if anyone on the call can comment on device support and where the cutoff point is, that would be great. Mirko, do you perhaps know the?
Oh, so that first question there about what specific Roku models, right? Correct. So the minimum requirements for instant resume are multi-core ARM processors due to because it depends on being able to run channels in separate processes. That's pretty much most of the Roku products that we ship today. There's just a few products that we don't, and they're much older products. Those details are all available on the instant resume developer page. But yeah, I mean, most products do support the instant resume feature.
Mm-hmm. I think I would add another question. Is there sort of like a known cutoff point where performance starts to drop based on memory capabilities of that device for some of the older devices out there?
I mean, at this point, I mean, the memory requirements we have for instant resume are 512 megabytes or higher devices, and that pretty much takes care of all of them. So yeah, I mean, in terms of memory, and as Jitesh had explained in his slides earlier, we do keep an instant resume channel cache. And that's one thing to point out, I would say, is that when you do suspend please try to reduce the memory of the channel as much as possible, just enough to quickly resume the scene that you want to bring the user back to. Because we do include memory as a criteria for which channels we're going to purge from the cache. So we consider the channel usage score, which is how often the user is using this channel. But then we also consider like how big the channel is in memory when it is suspended. So the smaller you can make your channel when it is suspended, the less likely it is to get purged, and the more likely that it'll be able to resume as quickly as possible for the user.
That's a good call out. Yep, thanks. So Tim Lee is asking, or kind of stating and looking for clarification. So the comment is, I assume the main thread's main function and the individual init functions don't get recalled on a resume, and that all in-memory bright script objects and the entire scene graph is reinstalled and rendered automatically. Is that accurate?
Jitesh, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I think that's a correct statement. So the resume handler will be called on the resume. The resume handler on the scene will be called, but the scene graph will be reinstated and rendered. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Stan writes, am I right to say that if a channel is suspended and in the meantime there is a new version of the channel that is released, then the channel will launch and not resume?
Yeah, that's correct. So we will update the channel. So as part of that update, if the channel was suspended in the background, it will get terminated so that we can then upgrade the channel. That's correct.
Cool. John Malik is asking, it's basically a question around backwards compatibility. So if they update their channel to support instant resume through the manifest and putting the handlers in the code, etc., will the channel run on older firmware beyond, I would actually say firmware 10.0. Instant resume is supported on 10.0 and higher. And so he's assuming the feature won't carry backwards, but he just wants to make sure there won't be crashes or anything of that nature.
Yeah, that's correct. On an older firmware where we don't support instant resume, that's right. The channel will run, it just will not get suspended. Correct.
Excellent. Brian Smith is asking, will this also work and support a voice command of home instead of pressing the home button?
Yes, that's correct. It will.
Okay. Juan is asking, can instant resume be implemented even if my channel does use another player different to the native player?
Different to the native player. I mean, if this is an SDK channel, I think they're not talking about NDK, but yeah, SDK channel using their own media player. Yeah, I mean, instant resume doesn't care what media player you're using. As long as it implements the suspend resume handlers and has the SDK instant resume and run as process in the manifest, it'll work. But then at that case, you will need to make sure that you are stopping your own native player, right? Mm-hmm. When you do go to suspend.
Cool. The next couple questions are from Atul. He's asking, if the channel crashes, do we get debug logs?
Yes, absolutely. Even better is you'll get better logging, and we're as well as we do have a little plugin for the perf tools that we have provided now. So we have the Chan perf tool, which is supported by instant resume, as we mentioned earlier in Jitesh's slides, where we can independently track CPU and memory usage. That's available as well. So we get much better logging and memory and CPU tracking with this feature.
Cool. Okay, the next question is from Steve Keen, actually. He usurped you until the question is, are we allowed to use certain aspects of instant resume without implementing it entirely? More specifically, can we utilize the home button handling functionality without actually suspending the app for tracking exit events?
Jitesh, you want to take that?
Let me see. So I'm trying to understand what he means. So
Steve, I was just going to say, Steve, if you want to raise your hand, this could be a good opportunity. I would just ask that you keep it fairly short since there's so many questions to get to. You can have the floor, Steve.
Great. Hey guys. So basically my understanding is that when you hit the home button with the instant resume functionality implemented or enabled, you get a couple seconds there or less than a second. I'm not really sure what the time was to actually handle that home button click. I'm wondering if we can utilize just that piece, as we have a lot of clients that want us to track when the home button is pressed, and that's not currently possible. So I'm hoping that we could utilize just that functionality without implementing the entire instant resume.
I mean, you could, in the suspend handler, you will get the suspend reason, right? And then you could, after that, exit the scene, right? And then, sort of kill your channel. That's possible to do. You get 5 seconds, by the way, after the channel is suspended, after the home button is pressed. Right now, the channels get 5 seconds to come back to home screen.
Great, thank you.
Cool. The next question is around how long does the channel stay in memory, and does it persist if there's a reboot of the device?
The channel will stay in memory as long as it will fit in the cache and it doesn't get picked for termination. As I mentioned, we have the criteria for staying in the cache. It's based on the channel's usage score, like how often the user is using the channel, and also how much memory it's consuming while in the background. So as I mentioned earlier, reducing the memory utilization of the channel in the background will keep it in the cache longer. But no, it does not persist after a reboot. The idea of instant resume is that we're keeping the channel in memory. And yeah, when you reboot the device, obviously the memory is going to get reset.
Cool.
It will stay in memory though if you turn your TV off, as long as you're not rebooting.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you, Ron.
Cool. The next question is, are there any limitations on instant resume for channels that play from a USB drive?
No limitations at all. In fact, our own Roku media player supports the instant resume feature, and it does support USB playback.
Awesome. How can we enable background tasks?
Jitesh, you want to take that?
Sure. So essentially, background tasks are basically while the channel is suspended, when it's suspended, the channel could sort of do some network, take some network actions, and if the channel needs more than the 5 seconds required, then what happens when the channel is suspended is the render threads get blocked. So if you want to use the background task, basically you can set up a parameter on the scene, sort of the background task parameter, and then once you turn it on, then the render thread is not blocked for another 5 seconds, and the user can still the channel can still do networking task and stuff. It won't be, the rendering will be still taken away, so the user will return back to the home screen, but the channel can continue using the render thread for another 5 seconds. If the network task requires some rendezvous, that will still be possible for those 5 seconds.
Very cool. So Sasa is asking, is there a plan to support breakpoints with instant resume so that execution can be continued?
I think they're asking about the BrightScript debugger.
Yeah.
And if so, I mean, we do support it during the background, but momentarily. But yeah, I mean, we are looking at enhancing that in future releases. So please stay tuned about if a channel is suspended, if that's what they're asking, like particularly, I guess, with sideloaded channels as well, to be able to debug their channels. But yeah, please stay tuned for future enhancements on that.
Mm-hmm. So Morgan's question, I might rephrase this a little bit, and then Morgan, if I misrepresent it, please feel free to raise your hand. But so there's performance criteria that channels need to meet in order to pass channel certification. And so Morgan is asking if there are several apps suspended, is that going to have an impact on their own in-channel performance, and therefore potentially make it harder to hit those benchmarks for certification?
No, it definitely should not impact performance of the foreground channel. We are suspending the background channel, so it is not getting any CPU cycles. And if memory becomes low for the foreground channel, we will terminate channels in the instant resume cache based again on channel usage or memory utilization. So yeah, it should not impact the foreground channel.
Cool. So this next question, I think maybe we can even up level it a bit and just talk, I think, generally about instant resume during ads. But so the question is, or that is to say, if the user exits the app while an ad is running. But so the question is, for ad pod resume, if the ads are dynamic and change every time the video is played with different positions and number of ads and different timestamps, how would you really be able to resume the ads?
Yeah, so we do support ads during suspend resume. So, we don't want to affect the revenue of a channel. And we understand that a lot of channels are supported through ads. So when a channel is suspended during an ad, it should resume in the ad. And we have channels that actually do that today. We don't want this feature to be able to be used to bypass ads or skip ads during video playback. So yeah, it's important for the channel to make sure they are resuming, and we have channels today that are doing that now. So if you suspend during an ad, it will resume back into the ad.
And one thing I wanted to add as well is that we do have somewhat of a cert requirement in regards to just if you were not to use instant resume, whereas if you can't skip ads if you were using the back button. So that should be another point of that this should be possible with our current cert requirements as well.
Cool. So I'll just make a quick note too. We are just bumping up against time here. We still have 10 questions. It seems like we're working down this question list faster than they're coming in. So for those of the folks on the call who are able to stay on, and if you wouldn't mind, I think that would be great. Of course, if you do have meetings or something to get to, please feel free to run. And then we'll keep this going for another 5 minutes or so if we can. So Euros is asking any recommendations on how to keep usage of background memory to a minimum in instant resume scenario. Also, will Roku at some point enforce this? Will Roku at some point enforce this practice so it can keep the number of channels in instant resume state as high as possible?
Yeah, these are very good questions. Thank you. And yes, so as part of this feature, we have released RightScript tools to enable you to track CPU and memory usage. So yeah, it is important to try to minimize as much as possible the memory usage of the channel. I mean, that would even in a foreground state as well as background, but particularly in the background state. So what you can do is, not have scenes or nodes that are not required for that resume. So if the channel is keeping a lot of nodes that aren't even visible on screen, or caching a lot of bitmaps, or maintaining other caches, please drop those caches and just keep the nodes available that your channel would need for that resume case, and that will hopefully drop the memory usage quite a bit for your channel. And then, as I mentioned, we do have the ChanPerf tool to help you visualize how much memory the channel is using. And with run as process and instant resume, we have much better memory tracking on a channel by channel basis. So it's going to be much more accurate for you to be able now to finally track the memory usage of your channel. So thank you for that question.
Yeah, that was a good one. Euros is asking, can run as process be used to feed the channel with data while the instant resume while suspended?
Well, the channel's not going to get CPU cycles if that's what he's asking. So if it's in the background state, no, it's not going to be able to have any handlers run or maintain connections because it's just not going to get the CPU cycles to do it. It would happen on the resume.
Cool. The next question is whether or not a channel that's currently suspended will be notified when it's purged, and whether or not the app can do anything in response.
Right. Yeah. So I don't think in this case the channel is going to get notified. Right, because oftentimes in order to keep the foreground channel running, we need to typically purge it as quickly as possible. So no, in that case, it's not going to get notified. It will get notified. During suspend and resume, you do get notified. And also on channel exit, but in the case of in the background and we need to kill it pretty quickly, it will not. But I mean, that's something we can look into in terms of enhancements if the channel wants to be notified in those cases.
Very cool.
When the channel relaunches, then it will know that was it a fresh launch or a resume. So they can also figure it out from that.
Yeah, that's true. Thanks.
Cool. Atul is asking, does the suspend save handle DRM licenses from the stream playback? What if you instant resume after a day? Can the license expire?
Yeah, that is correct, right? So if you're going to resume playback, you need to basically make sure that you are reacquiring those licenses in order to allow playback to continue. That's correct.
Cool. All right, I do want to get to all these questions, but I also want to be mindful of time. So let's try to make these last handful here, maybe like rapid fire. So Chris is asking, how does this work with Cache FS? Is that counted against your suspended channel?
No, that's not counted.
Excellent. Jordan is asking, does enabling instant resume for a channel change the screensaver behavior?
No, it does not. And on the suspend, you get a reason so you can tell if you're home or screensaver so that you can, decide what you want to do and differentiate between the two.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Is there a set amount of memory assigned for the current running app?
No. So the current running app can have all the memory available that it needs. And we don't have a set limit for a foreground channel. On the background channel, that's something we're looking into. So eventually, yes, we will have limits. We don't have them now, but just realize that if your channel is using a lot of memory in the background, it will most likely be the first one that gets picked to purge.
Swaran is asking, is it possible to get the instant resume state of the channel using SSDP or ECP commands?
Jitesh, do you want to take that?
So I'm not completely sure also. I don't think it's possible, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, sounds like an enhancement we could make like through ECP if you want to be able to query. I don't believe we do that now.
Yeah, we can add that.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Robert Jamieson is asking, is it possible to refresh the ads on resume? Based off what you're saying, it sounds like it is. Please keep in mind that after a long time, certain stitchers will kill your session.
Yes, it is possible. You can refresh the ads on resume.
Two more. There was a bug, and that bug was that the resume handler and the main thread both get the deep link event.
That issue has been resolved, right? I believe, correct, Jitesh?
Yeah, that has been resolved. Yeah, I know in 10.5 it's for sure resolved. Maybe in 10.0 also, I'm not sure.
Oh, and actually, Robert's raising his hand. I think there have been some questions around resuming ads, so I'll call on you, Robert. I think it would be good if you can elaborate.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you said you have 1 to 2 seconds to basically take care of this, right? And get back up and running. After a long enough timeline, stitchers will kill your session and your ads are basically no longer valid. They need to be refreshed. So if there's a time limitation of 1 to 2 seconds, that's going to be incredibly difficult, if not impossible, for you to stitch a long VOD asset and start playing it again and seek to the bookmark where you were at previously. You know what I'm saying?
No, so there is no time limit on the resume. There is a time limit on the suspend. If you suspend the channel, you need to be back. You need to give back. You need to be back to the home screen within 5 seconds. But on resume, there is no time limit. So it depends on the channel completely what they want to show on resume.
Okay.
Yeah, there is no time limit on resume.
Cool. All right, Kieran, I do see your hand up. I'm going to take Swaran's question first because I will stop us at the top of the hour. And I think it's just fair to take these in the order they came in, but I'll get to you in just a minute. So Swaran asks, if channel if the channel is going to launch from a deep link, will it be from instant resume state or from a fresh launch?
Either or. We support deep linking either from obviously a cold launch or a resume. So and that's the documentation for how to handle that is in the developer docs. But yeah, you can resume into a deep link.
Okay, cool. All right, so now I'm going to call on you, Kieran, and you're going to close out the developer summit with the last question. So that's a big honor. You can unmute your audio.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, thanks. So just about that bug I was mentioning. So now the deep link event is only, it can only be captured in the resume handler or the resume handler, right?
That's correct. It can only be handled in the resume handler.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Yeah, that's all.
Okay, awesome.